All right, we're live here in the Judiciary Committee this Friday morning, April 28th, and we're going to take up S6. And we're going to look at one issue that I just want to get some clarification on. And we're going to have to get that clarification from Marshall, will be our clarifier. If you can join us, Marshall.
I can. You haven't told me.
I haven't told you. The skill of a trial lawyer, is to be able to immediately react to any question, no matter how left field it comes from.
Or defer if I need to, but go ahead.
And you could, yes. So if you could, you have version 2.1 of S6.
Yes, I do.
All right. So page 7, the subdivision 2.
Yes.
So my question is the following. Let me set this up as well as I can. I'm going to look first at the.
Okay, thank you.
It should have been passed out.
2.1 of the amendment.
It's 2.1 of draft 2.1 should have been passed out. I know.
Oh, it's in my hand.
It's in your
Thank
hand.
you. I'm a little like, yeah, thank you.
So 2A,
Thank you.
voluntary by clear and convincing evidence. My understanding is voluntariness is understood. That's dealt with. We're not changing anything except the standard of proof.
Yes.
Currently, it's preponderance. All right, so that's good. So I'm going to jump to 2C.
Yes.
Reliability. So the question, so this comes up, well, let me go back. 2A, that this whole idea of whether the evidence is going to be admissible or not is in a suppression hearing. This is where these issues come up. Is that correct? Okay. So but would reliability come up in a suppression hearing? Or wouldn't reliability be, that you're just looking at why the statements were made. Was it coerced? Was there threats? Whatever. Not necessarily what the statements are. Isn't that a different inquiry? And should that be part of the suppression hearing? That's kind of, I think, the question's been raised.
I would say it is a different inquiry than is typical, but I do think that it's appropriate. Judges often make findings of reliability. For example, in any trial where a child witness is going to testify using protections under Rule 807, the judge has to make findings of reliability by a preponderance. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah, by a preponderance of the evidence. Same when a judge is sentencing, the judge makes all their factual findings by a preponderance, and they have to find those to be reliable. So I do think it is a change. I don't think that it's a bad change.
Okay.
And just to give you an example of how that might play out, and this wouldn't fit specifically. I'm going to give you an example of a confession, and this is a real life confession that was not induced by any sort of deception or coercive practices or anything, but really gives you an example of how something could be voluntary, not induced by a law enforcement officer's use of deception, but also unreliable very clearly. I had a client who used to confess to everything, and he was in Woodside when all this stuff happened. He couldn't have done it because he was locked up when all this stuff happened, but he would see it on the news, and he would immediately run and confess to having committed every offense that was on the news. He confessed to, and so that's an example. Those were certainly voluntary confessions. They were certainly not induced by any sort of deception, but they were not at all reliable.
Joe.
I guess the only thing that pops up in my mind is that decision for the trier of fact, though, because, ultimately it's a jury that would decide if something is reliable or not, if they agree with it or not, if they think that the person is being truthful or not truthful. And so are we short-circuiting the role of the jury by saying that something needs to pass the trier of law, the judges, feeling that something is reliable? Is that a fact issue or is that a law issue? I think is sort of my question.
And I think that it's a case where, just like in, for example, an expert witness scenario, the judge acts as a gatekeeper. The judge does a baseline, is this reliable enough to put before the jury? And then it's up to the jury to decide what weight to give to it. But the judge makes a threshold determination of reliability, just like with an expert witness.
So that's the main concern. And I just did find out we are going to get written testimony from the Attorney General's office by 3:00 today. And I do think, so I mean, we could go ahead and just pass this, but I think that'd be a little premature if we're still going to hear from them, because I could see if we don't have this part quite right, that we could be marching to a committee of conference or further back and forth with the Senate. I think if we get this right, I think my feeling that there's probably a pretty good chance that there's going to be concurrence on this. So that's why I think it's better to make sure we see what they're saying, because I'm sure that I did a not very good job of expressing their concern. And then if we feel that we need, are you able to see that written? I know you're not available this afternoon, but are you able to see that to tell me that you need to come back in on Tuesday?
To see it and tell you by 5:00.
Okay, so we'll probably be postponing the vote on this to Tuesday, which, because if we get this right, hopefully, again, as I'm saying, we can just they'll be in a position to concur with it.
Absolutely.
But this, if the AG's office raises some issues, I definitely, they will not go away if we just pass this. They will be taken to the Senate and have to deal with it there. All right, we're going to adjourn until 1:00. And at 1:00, we're going to have a half hour more of discussion on S4. I doubt that we'll vote that one either, but just in case, you never know. And then we're going to have Michelle at 1:30 to talk about H45, the changes from the Senate. And then we're going to have Eric on H227, which is the Uniform Power of Attorney Act, to talk about the Senate changes. And then, if necessary, we might be back at 3 if people feel they're in the position to vote on a version of S4. So I think that's how we'll work it.
I won't need more than 15 minutes max, just a little FYI.
Okay. So why don't you plan on coming at 1:45, giving us a little more time to talk about S4? That work?
Are you still talking about S89 today? Did you say that?
Oh, right. That was at 3:00.
Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe at 3:00. It depends on what I hear back from DMH. And how they want.
That's been
So
resurrected?
Yeah. So essentially the question is, it's kind of like an all or nothing question. That's out there. It's like, does the administration, does DMH, does Dale are they insisting that we have the bill that includes the Dale component and the DMH component? And if they don't have all of that, then we'll just table it until next year, period. What I proposed, what I think we should do, but I want to hear from the stakeholders, at least particularly the two agencies that are going to be in charge of proceeding with this, is take out all the Dale stuff and proceed with what we have on the DMH side. And we'll have a few amendments from healthcare that we'll look at. We're not going to have that stuff ready this afternoon. This afternoon will be more of a discussion of where we are with it. And we'll have a new draft to look at on Tuesday, and either later Tuesday or Wednesday morning vote on that. Unless I hear that they'd just rather table it till next year. So hopefully we'll have that discussion and have that information by 3:00 or when we get off the floor. So anyway, let's adjourn until
1, you said?
until